Hey everyone, I hope this works. I'm going to bring on one of my friends, Melanna, and we were connected last year. I think about that this time, so. Oops, that was an accident. Let's see if this works. We're going to have an open discussion. We didn't want to have any scripts or bullet points or anything. We just kind of wanted to shoot the shit because she's tired, I'm tired. Let's see if I can bring you on. Yay! Working! Cool.
Hello. Can you see
Hey,
me?
how are you?
Good. I'm trying to adjust this. I'm not in my normal space, so I'm like, all over the place. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? I'm so glad I got to talk to you today,
I'm excited.
friend.
Ugh, we need this conversation for sure. Can you hear me
Yeah.
okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. Whatever you need, I'm here to openly speak about all of this. So,
Yeah, so you go ahead and introduce yourself to,
mhm.
my crew.
Gotcha. Cool. So if you're on replay, if you're here now, what is up? My name is Melanna. So I actually am a doctoral student that studies physical activity and health, particularly in people of color, because that's where a lot of the burden health disparity actually lives. However, I'm also an intuitive mentor, and really my kind of expertise is with soul integration, and I use duality as a modality, and I'm just really passionate about working with our ego and our intuition and just manifesting in that way. So that's just generally who I am. And I've known Tia for some time now via Facebook, and I'm just excited to be supportive here through all this, but also give support from where I can, if that makes sense. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So yeah, we met either 1 or 2 years ago
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
sometime. So I'm glad to have you on, and you guys should check out her TikTok. I'm just gonna shout out that TikTok is fire. That's the stuff about astrology, and I think that's like your fun niche for TikTok.
Yeah, it's fun for
So
sure.
go check her out. And I'm a marketing expert and confidence coach, all about empowerment, sexuality, and marketing because that's what I went to school for as well. So that's like what
Yeah.
I'm good at, but I integrate. So we're just going to be kind of having like an open discussion. I'm all for Black Lives Matter. I'm about highlighting change. And I think that during this time, there's been a lot of like back and forth and like kind of more segregation where we should be more integrated. So I kind of felt like that was in my heart is that we should always try and understand people and understand where you're coming from and not create like a shame tactic for
Mhm.
anybody and then be like listen to each other and create more integration, be like, oh, I understand you, or maybe you said something wrong, this is why, and this is not your job. We can talk about that. This is nobody's job, but
Yeah,
I'm just saying to create more integration, it would be good if people didn't just shut people out, but was like more trying to understand each other. What do you think?
right. Yeah, so for me, it's really it's a difficult thing to navigate. So we can all agree with that. However, we have to, if this is going to work, we have to come from a place of compassion. And we also have to accept our ignorance. The word ignorance has had a evolved into a negative thing when in actuality it just means not knowing about a specific thing, right? And so compassion, identifying our ignorance as well as our privilege. And we talk about white privilege a lot, which I've gone into all the definitions and what it means for you, and we can talk about that when I specifically talk about how to show up, right? But also privilege and knowledge. So there's a lot of people, most people that are actually dealing with the most with the systemic racism, right? They don't have an education like me. When I go out, people don't know I'm educated, so I still deal with those things, but at least I have there's things I have available to me where they don't. So there's a privilege in knowledge as well as outside of race, right? So there's a few levels we have to think about when we talk about this. And I think, Tia, when you mentioned integration, we can't do that if we don't understand our positionality. And by that, I mean, okay, you're a white woman. What does that mean within this dynamic? Because no matter how you feel, it doesn't matter. People are still going to say, okay, she's a white woman, because that's what they see you as, right? Same thing here. I'm a black woman, which is very different from being a black man. So the way I approach this, my positionality needs to really be the focus, because it's going to be different than other people. Yeah, so I hope, generally speaking, that's when we talk about integration, we just have to understand how we are going to contribute to that. So it's really hard, right? Compassion, understanding where you come from, and accepting ignorance is so important. And sometimes that's hard to do for a lot of people.
And for maybe this is another level, is also understanding like some certain areas, they nobody was born racist. Nobody was born. Everybody is loving. You're a baby. You were not born racist.
Right.
It's taught. And so some areas, maybe it was taught differently, or
Mm-hmm.
taught to be against a certain race, or maybe it was just because you didn't see very many black
Yep.
people that you didn't know that it was already, which I've seen posts about this. And I'm very proud. I just got the chills. Like, I got really proud. Somebody, very white, small town, religious area, he was like, I'm a racist. And at first you're like, whoa. He's like, I didn't realize. I didn't realize that I'm systemically conditioned to be racist and to judge and to, because it's not the norm. So that might be one of those parts. What did you say? The education. They just don't know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think you bring up a great point. So we have the overt racism that everyone thinks of, right? So saying the N word, calling black people monkeys, like all these things that are just awful and everyone freaks out about. But then people who they don't realize it's more like a benevolent sexism, right? So it's like, I mean, benevolent, I'm sorry, racism. I talk about benevolent sexism. So sorry about that.
Good.
But it's like, oh my God, you're a black man. You're doing so well for yourself. That's racism. And so, for example, the man in your town, all he probably seen was black people on TV, which is not
Yeah.
typically doctoral students like myself and Barack Obama's, and, which is nothing wrong with not being those things, but it's really hard for someone to do that. And on top of that, no one's teaching black history. So where are you supposed to get this from? How are you supposed to know without the education piece? That's not an excuse for it, but that's how we have to start understanding. Like you said, it's a learned behavior. And
Mm-hmm.
to unlearn something, we have to learn something else, essentially, right? There's something that happens, and then we have a reaction, and we learn how to react to those things. So this is a learned behavior. Oh God, black man, let's move to the other side of the street. Oh, I'm starting to see, like, this was just someone just told me this. Am I supposed to really be afraid? Then maybe we don't go to the other side of the road.
Yeah.
So it's kind of definitely learned behavior. So I'm very glad you made that clear. We're not born that way, and that comes with the
Yeah.
compassion.
Right now, it's even for me, educating myself further, understanding further, like just educating yourself and understanding is the key. And so anybody being like, all lives matter, yes, all lives do matter, but just kind of understanding that we're focusing on black lives and we're creating a change. I have to say one thing is, you guys, it's Pride Month.
Yes.
It's Pride Month.
Yep.
You do not see any of these gay people being like, what happened to our month?
No, not a single person, because and they've been marginalized as well. So if they can suck it up, someone who's white and has privilege can suck it up and learn. And it's so it's so funny you say that, because I always tell people, again, everything I say, as I like kind of give you guys little nuggets on, like your audience nuggets on how to navigate these things, it all comes from a place of love. And when you feel a trigger, that is where your power is. So if you get triggered, right, and you're like, oh my God, you get this like white guilt possibly, that's okay. You're starting to uncover the racism within yourself that you don't know. I had a whole conversation with my health coach, and she was like, I had a best friend in college, and he was an econ major, and I was just like, oh my God, this black man, he's amazing. And she's the sweetest person. and she was triggered by some of this stuff, these microaggressions. So yeah, it's if they can deal with that, you know, people who are marginalized, like gay and lesbian, all these other people, then you can take a second and be uncomfortable. When you
Mm-hmm.
haven't had to be uncomfortable for so long, you can be uncomfortable, and that's where we grow. All these coaches talk about, oh, go out your comfort zone mindset, and okay, where are you now?
Yeah.
Why aren't you showing up uncomfortably when people's lives are being threatened? Health, it's not just police brutality. Health, um, education, healthcare, specifically healthcare, incarceration. I mean, the numbers are insane, and that's a whole nother conversation. But if you can just be uncomfortable with focusing on, like you said, knowledge and your ignorance, you can handle that, because people are
Yeah.
handling these other things. So a lot to unpack
And
there.
yeah, races do segregate us, but it's a thing. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
am a white woman. I do have white privilege. I do. And I know that. But maybe I wouldn't have known that if I grew up in a different area where we didn't talk about race and understanding. Whereas, like, other people, they're just like, I'm white and I had to grow up and work, hard as fuck and like just didn't I wasn't raised with a golden spoon.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have it easy. It was
Mm-hmm.
hard. They worked for everything. But that's still any of these people still have white privilege.
Yes.
You may get arrested because of your attitude. You may get arrested because blah blah blah. But we still have, like, when you're in a white, especially a super white area, it's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people do choose, not everybody, white employees or this or this or this.
Yeah. The data is overwhelming. I mean, you have scientific studies that have looked at this, and I'm so it's interesting. Okay, so this is not my quote, but it's everywhere. White privilege does not mean your life was not hard. It means it was
Yeah.
not hard because of the color of your skin, and that is okay. The white guilt part, when you start looking for someone to appease the white guilt, and you just in general, I'm just talking about whoever is listening to this, that's where you mess up how you show up. That's when you should start to look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm not an ally right now. When you start to worry about, oh my God, well, I did this, and like, well, I had a hard life. You can't understand. And that, in saying I can't understand, that's when, as Black people, we're going to be like, thank you for saying you don't understand, but that you support us. That's what it's about. It's not about evening the playing field, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's
I,
see. The real issue isn't race, it's violence. Yes, violence is very bad. What is BLM doing about extraordinary numbers of black on black violence? Yes, there's definitely, I would love to hear it. Why don't you
Okay,
say
so I first want to say that race is very much, when you look at the system, I think people focus too much on the person to person interactions. When you look at the system, it was literally built with the intention to oppress Black people. Like, that is the intention. So it's 100% about race. Like, I think we just, again, focus on the police brutality, but this runs so much deeper. So it is. Do white people experience police brutality?
yeah.
Absolutely. But when you look at the numbers of people, will give the crude numbers like, oh, well, more white people have been shot. It's like, well, there's more of you. So,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But as far as the Black Lives Matter, what are they doing about Black on Black crime? What we're doing is trying to be treated equally. Because when you see this Black on Black crime, that's a whole nother topic. But when you look at that, people are more likely to kill someone of their own race. Just like when we look at sociology, people are more likely, like affinity, they're more likely to sit with someone who looks like them at the lunch table. They're more likely to join the basketball team if there's people that look like them. So that Black on Black, Black Lives Matter, that is not the responsibility of the Black community right now. You can't expect in this system, why are there so many Black men who are selling drugs, right? Black men are drug dealers if they have a lot of money. No education because of property taxes, so not getting money within the community. The education is poor. Then the families are working 3 or 4 jobs and then selling drugs, and then you get hooked on drugs. All these different things. The system is built for that, and that's not saying there's no responsibility in that, but
Mm-hmm.
we can't point fingers when we are literally feeding in Black people into a system that's meant to incarcerate, that's meant to kill you health wise. The data for Black women and mortality risk of their infants is just insane, strictly off of stress. So it's 100% about race. And it's not the responsibility of the Black community to focus on Black crime. That's not our burden when we live in a system that doesn't allow us to focus on our interrace within us, right? We can't focus on that when it's hard to even drive a car. So it's really important to ground yourself and not, I think, try to identify what the root of the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to let people of color say those things, because you're looking at just like the picture, right? And understanding who painted it. If you don't know who painted, it's just to put it in that. I'll let you respond to that, but I'm trying to just get people to understand the systemic piece changes the story.
So you can read the comments and respond. So
it is something Black people should focus on. I do not agree with your statement. Melissa, thank you for your comment. If I'm being honest with you, based on my education and being a Black woman, I can respect your opinion, that's fine, but I'm not going to retract my statement, because I'm very educated in this and I've lived this. So I just am here because T invited me, and I really just want to educate. So just like when I do my readings, if something doesn't resonate with you, that's totally fine. So I'm just here to support those that want to listen to a woman of color to get a perspective. So nothing but love there. If you don't agree, I just explained it from my point of view and with my education, like I said, in my experience. So if you have other questions, that's fine too.
So what I have to say is that right now there's going to be a little bit of chaos, because we're having a movement where I went to a protest the other day, and honestly, I was kind of afraid because of all the news. We're blowing up, so much fear, tear gassing. My friend in Seattle went. She took a video. She was literally sitting down. People were in their masks. Their hands were up. They were kneeling. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And I was commenting. And then the next video was they just got tear gassed and there was no violence. So I was afraid to go to a protest. But I did anyways. It was close to my home. I felt comfortable. And I was like, okay, like I could walk home literally if I needed to. And if things get out of hand, I'll just leave.
Right.
Because some of my other friends did that. So I went there, and it was super, the cops were on the other block even, and it was very powerful. There was lots of good vibe, lots of good energy. There actually wasn't a ton of Black people, probably because they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to get hurt, get in trouble. And so I feel like I'm fighting for you guys, because I do know I have white privilege. I do know I'm less likely to get hurt, or especially white and blonde and a woman, very less likely to get in some type of altercation.
Yeah, but and that's, first off, thank you for going and doing that. I think that's beautiful. And I've seen there's way more good protests than there are bad. So that's just a whole nother, like, and there's actually hate groups that were sending in white people to riot. So we don't know the breakdown of race of who's rioting and who is not. So that's something to also think about. What was that?
Mine was just kind of like, it's my area and it's a smaller group. So I think that also plays a part.
It's still brave though. It's still, and so that's what I wanted to mention. You talked about, your privilege. I told you about that. I did that intensive with a few other people, and all white coaches. There was like one Black coach too. She was there. Business coaches, they were so receptive. And what I really got them to understand, when you surrender to the fact that you have privilege, it's so fucking empowering. Like, you're not guilty. You didn't choose to be white, but you have the choice to stand up for somebody. Because you have that. It's just like a child who gets hurt, right? Even if they're 15 years old and you're their parent, you have the power to go and take care of something that they don't. And I'm not saying Black people are like babies, but my point is there's tears here. And unfortunately, white privilege is simply just a legacy of white supremacy. That's it. And if you understand those things, it's so powerful to say, I'm white. I don't feel guilty, but I'm damn sure going to help my family, my friends who don't look like me. They don't get that opportunity to do that. And it's
Yeah.
empowering. I bet you felt empowered at that protest, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just like, I'm scared, but I'm here.
Yeah,
It's
no, it was
beautiful.
fun and really, really good energy.
Mm-hmm.
What I was gonna say about that is that right now, I don't know where you are, Melissa. Where are you? Where are you located? But for me, I don't know. She said that there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of black on black crime, but I think we need to focus on the integration, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm using. I discussed this on my last podcast. If you guys want to go check it out,
Yeah, yeah.
but I have witnessed like racism in where I live, which is a
Mm-hmm.
super predominantly white area, and being treated differently. And my friend told me, she was like, you could have actually used your white privilege to speak up for your black friend. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I could have went and talked to the cop and been like, hey, I got his badge number and name, and just wanted to let you know that he was super uncomfortable and he acted racist towards my friend. I am white, but use that towards the benefit. And
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that. Whereas if she did
Mm-hmm.
it, it would just be like,
More.
he
Mm-hmm.
said, she said. Whereas if I said it, it could have stood out,
Truth.
and I didn't
Yeah.
ever think of that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, we need to focus on the good. So I don't know where you're at about black on black crime. And yes, it's everywhere, but we need to focus on the good things that can shift. Like, I've never seen so many white people get engaged with this and communicate and share
Yeah.
their white privilege,
Yeah.
or share that maybe they
Mm-hmm.
did see that they're kind of racist in
Yep.
some way. So I just want to share that part. Did you have
Yeah.
anything to say?
There's a comment I'm gonna see. More black people are murdered here in Philadelphia, African American Hispanic by each other than officers. Okay, Melissa, so wait, let me read some more. Black on black, and no one's ever truly tried to unite us. There are murders every day. Um, sorry, Melissa, I'm trying to catch up here. We make this
So
huge
I think
show.
that
What was that?
I think while reading this that we do need to use things to unite. So like the protests. I don't know. Have you been to a protest? Have you
Mm-hmm.
engaged with them? I don't know what would you say, but I love your.
Yeah. So I think when So I'm just thinking about Melissa's comments. I didn't read every word, but she's sharing what I think a lot of people have shared.
Mm-hmm.
What my advice would be to Melissa, it doesn't sound like necessarily that she's interested, Melissa. It's like that you're interested, and correct me if you're wrong, to be educated in this area. It sounds more like you want to have like a conversation on different opinions, which is fine.
Yeah.
But if you were asking for advice, my advice would be to go, and you could talk to me as well, to understand Black people and how we've been marginalized, because that's a different perspective. Because then you're looking at, well, they're killing each other, so it's fine. That thought process doesn't make sense. And I also want to speak on the unity thing. There is a great division happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's any revolution, and this is a revolution. I got this intuitive download, and many other people did, like December, January. This is an uprising. We're changing, and it's actually a beautiful thing. As we go through this, there's going to be people that are quote unquote left behind. So when you go to a higher consciousness, you can't bring everyone with you,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So, like right now, with what Melissa's saying, I can only provide what I know. And as we move forward with that, we can't unite, right? How are we going to unite when there's a whole group of people that are invalidating the feelings of Black people? If people are shaming each other all the time, we can't have the people that are at a higher consciousness, that are for the greater good, that are understanding their ignorance on both sides, that are embracing learning the Black history that we never learned, right? And those people, we're going to have a beautiful community. And if you're not in that growth, there's no fighting that, So it's like the exhausted part we talked about. We can only share our stories, and we can only share our level of education. And if people want to fight that, this is not the time to grind against each other. This is the time you need to listen to those who are oppressed and those who are educating themselves. And then once you educate yourself, you need to use your privilege to help educate other people. You need to once you educate yourself, talk to people of color. Don't go to them and say, well, I don't know, so you tell me, but be like, hey, I read this book. I don't really understand. That is how we unite. But we can't water down the problem so we can unite. That's not uniting. That is silencing those who are being hurt.
Yeah.
Two different things.
For just this discussion, it's understanding maybe what she was even talking about previously. So for me, I don't know either. So maybe it would be me understanding what she was even talking about, black on black fighting, blah, blah, blah. Also, like you also said, numbers, you can say numbers, but there's less black people in the US, especially, right?
Yeah, so there's like, I think there's like 14%, and then black people make up about 50 something percent of those incarcerated.
Yeah, so the numbers may be skewed, but the percentages are not.
Yes.
So, for example, if you guys go look up Utah, they have the highest police brutality for black people, but guess what? They also have a lot less black people, but that's probably part of the problem.
Yes.
Is that.
Yes.
But it also shows that they're not being educated.
Yes. Or even like, again, I'm a scientist, and when I learned is you have to understand how to interpret numbers, and no one's taught that. So like you said, you have your crude, right? Like this many black people killed this many black people this year, but only this many white people did it. But if you look at breakdowns and percentages, and there's variables, you guys, social economic status, so income, wealth, weight, even overall, all these things, when you put it into science, like into mathematical models and stuff, it's very, very different. You can't just look at these crude numbers and make assumptions. And even so, going back to the issue, we can't deflect, the issue is that the system is impacting people. And so, okay, black on black crime. I'm not killing people. Many black people are not killing each other. So what about us? It's the blinders. It's the people who say like, everyone, what is it? I don't see color. That's the problem, because our system sees color. So I'm going to need for you to see me. It's that same thing. So I was like, well, what about black on black crime? That's not the issue at hand. It just deflects it. But again, Melissa, if you're here, if you have questions about that, I'm more than open to it. Anyone does. So
there's lots of white on white crime too. So I just, that's just, I feel like it's just a time for understanding and change, and people are listening. So there's more education. There's more people promoting this. It's just like a movement. It's, we're trying to segregate, or we're trying to integrate, sorry. And there is a lot of segregation when people are like fighting and not opening their mind. But I do agree, like, peace is ultimately what we want, but also you've noticed that we go into war sometimes to fight for what we want.
For peace.
For peace.
Yeah.
And so it happens, but I just, part of me is thinking like these Santa Monica. So I live by LA. I live in Southern California, and there's a lot of violence going on in LA. Not in my area, but in Santa Monica, there was a lot of looting, which sucks, and it's terrible, and I'm not for it. And it hurts my heart that businesses that were already struggling are going to struggle more. But listen to this. 90% of the people who got arrested were not even from Santa Monica. Like, so that just kind of like opens your brain, and you're like, okay, they're not a part of the movement. It's not. It's people have completely what's the word, like stolen or hijacked the Black Lives Matter movement, which is just like when people came and took the land from the indigenous people, like just stealing and taking is the same thing. So this whole movement, it's been the biggest civil rights movement in history, which is beautiful. So there's way more people who are in support than there are not. And if they are not, well, they're the minority now. So I think it's a very beautiful thing, but we still have to educate, right? And that's where we are now. But where was I going with that? If you seeing one bad person, right? So if you see one bad person and they're like, Black Lives Matter, I hate white people, they're not part of the movement. Black Lives Matter, if people don't know, is about you're saying all lives matter. Data, health care, incarceration, education suggests that ours do not. So if all lives matter, let's make sure they do.
That is all Black Lives Matter is about. It is not about being better than white people. It is not about not taking responsibility for what all humans do. It's not about that. It's about getting equal treatment in this system. And that's why you're seeing all these bills going through. That's why you're seeing these law changes so quickly, because people are identifying the points in the system that are problematic. And I think we're in a good place. It's painful when people say certain things, especially, you know, like it's painful for you when people say bad things you've said, like, oh my God, that's so shitty of them to say, and that could be hurtful, and it is for me too. But I have so many white allies that are doing it right that it keeps me going. It keeps me being on here educating people, which for us, it's been exhausting. This whole thing has been
Yeah.
exhausting for both of us. So because of my allies, because of those who are asking questions and listening instead of pointing out, well, what about this? What about this? Well, you're doing this, or you're doing. It's like, listen, let us be seen. Black history, like I said, not taught. Low education, that means we're not going to higher education levels. That means we're not in Congress. Like, it's the whole just craziness. So that's why our white allies are so important in this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, go at the stats on
Yeah.
power.
Yeah. It's
Almost all white. So it's just helping people rise up. And that's even goes for other colors, like in
yes.
other people,
Mm-hmm.
like pride. Like
Yep.
before, there used to not be any gay, lesbian
Mm-hmm.
people in power. So it's
Yeah.
like everybody, but especially for Pride Month, they know so well what it's like to be a minority that they're like, if you didn't know this, in LA, they're actually not doing a Pride Month. They're doing a Black Lives Matter. They're joining. They're helping promote this. And they're not like, what about us?
Right.
They're like, how can we help this movement? It's going towards a better future, towards more peace, towards more integration.
Yes. And what you're talking about is what every Black person needs and wants right now, and that's space. So what the Pride, you know, the group of Pride who support Pride, like I, of course I do, when they're doing that, when they're like, we're going to sit down, they're saying, hey, we're going to let you have this space because we know you need it. Like, we need it, and we always have needed it. So you, Lana, I want to bring you on live. You're saying, hey, I want to give you space to speak on this. That's when you really learn. You don't learn from spewing. You learn from giving the people who are hurting the space. And when I say hurting, I'm saying the Black community is mourning lives of people we don't even know. And we know that there's going to be another article, a couple weeks, maybe a couple days. You know, it's pain. It's not just, oh, this isn't fair. Like, it's painful. And you, Tia, I know it's hurtful for you to see. So just imagine looking and seeing your brother in the eyes of that person, seeing your mom. It's just, it's so painful. So thank you so much for providing this space, because that's what it takes. It doesn't take, you know, being again like, oh, we're the strong ones, so we're going to save the Black people, the white savior complex, which is also studied like, no, it's about, I love the shit out of you, so I want to give you space and I want to learn because I want us to have peace. But if that means rocking what people see as peace, which it's never been peaceful for Black people, this isn't peaceful. If that's what it means to get to true peace, well, let's fucking go. Let's do it. I'm so overwhelmed with love despite everything from people like you. Just, it's beautiful. Like, people might think it's just an ugly time. It is sad, but it's happening now. Finally.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of negative things for sure.
Yeah.
Including just some of the protests are very terrible. And I have watched people that maybe are not educated. They go to protests and they stir up the pot, which that's not why I don't. I go, I want to create insanity and chaos. But like, I do agree that the problem is segregation and division. I do agree with that. I said that, and I do 100% agree. But we got to understand each other and create and hold space for other people's feelings. And like, even if somebody disagrees with you, try and see if there's any part of truth in that. So like, yesterday I got shamed for something.
Yeah.
And I went and I tried to understand and I apologized. And instead of being like, oh, you guys are like dividing me and blah, 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 and making it about me, which I could have, I was like, okay, how do I understand this? I'm trying to understand. And I think I understand parts of it, even though other people don't. You didn't agree with it, and my other friends don't agree with it. But I'm trying to even still be aware.
Yes.
And I don't want to create segregation. So
yes,
I agree with that.
yeah, and I think I took based on what Melissa said. It sounds more like it doesn't sound exactly what you're talking about, and that's why I said what I said. Because again, when you do that, it's on that other person. It's not, they might still divide, even though you're trying to unite, So those are going to be the people like you who kind of looked at that situation. Those are going to be the people that are able to do it. And even as a Black woman, when people make comments about Black Lives Matters is ridiculous, or they make comments about like the Black on Black crime things and stuff, it's very hurtful. But I listen because I realize that there's ignorance in that. I have to have compassion for that. They don't get to sit at a top university and learn about this stuff. They haven't been exposed. They don't have a Black brother to look at and be scared. So until people can feel the pain and be emotionally like you, I can see it in your eyes, I can hear it in your voice. The reason that you're talking about not segregating is because it has a visceral effect on you. If it didn't have like an emotional, you wouldn't be able to do it. And that's why we have to be compassionate and listen, because when you hear people say things, you can hear when it's just spewing versus when it's coming a place of feelings. Like during that intensive, it was beautiful. Like the questions people asked, it was kind of cute. I'm not gonna lie, because they're like, so can I say Black people and like stuff like that? But they're so open and willing to be uncomfortable. And then they left and they were super, super comfortable talking about it. So until you feel it and you sit in your role, you sit in your pain, what does it make you feel? You can't change it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I get
I
chills.
put myself in these situations, and I do have a diverse set of friends that I'm around often. So it's not like, oh, I have this one friend over there.
Oh, that's the worst.
But I'm like, I'm in it.
Yeah.
And so I notice it. I see it. I witness it. It's not just, it's done to like my sister, like my friends, like my close friends. So like it does hurt me.
Yes.
So I like learning. But that was so my last podcast. I'm going to share this on my podcast.
Can you actually like link that or something? The one you were mentioning?
Yeah, definitely will. Put it in the comments. And it's putting yourself in, I wouldn't say their shoes. I would say like think of them as your brother or your sister or your husband or like lover or whatever. Like how would you feel if that was happening to them? Somebody wrote a really good post. She wrote, I don't even know who it was. It just got on my feed. And she was like, if that was my son, oh my gosh, if he was sitting there for 9 minutes, that was my son asking for me. Like, think of that. Like, that was somebody close to you. So,
yeah. And it's human when you provide this space like you're doing right now. It gives us the opportunity to humanize ourselves. Like I have a favorite color. I have a favorite food. Like I'm not going and shooting other Black people. It's like I'm a human just like you. And I think that this space helps do that, to humanize the Black community. Like you just said, and you've probably seen it, a woman, I think she was a Hispanic woman, but she was holding up a sign and it said, when Floyd called out for his mom, all moms were called out for. Like, you should have,
like,
I just got chills just thinking about it. Like, I couldn't even imagine. But that's just one of, I don't even know how many people have suffered from that. I can't even list them anymore, even as a Black person.
I actually, yeah, we'll end shortly, but one of my close friends who's never spoke about this, he actually came out on a post and saying that's how his dad died. Being a child, being super young, like, you know, and it people know him. He's successful. He's well off. People know him. He doesn't up. He's not super open about his life. And so him coming out about that and how it's affecting him, it connected to being like, oh, like, yeah, this does happen. Like,
yeah. It's so normal though.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be. Shouldn't be.
Well, we kill each other though. And that's when people will say that. And it's like, no, police officers, I don't care what's going on, police officers should not be killing anyone.
Yeah.
Like that. And if you are someone who, I just want to make sure I say this, if you are an officer that cannot de-escalate a situation like that, you shouldn't be one. And if you look at statistics across the world, we have an outrageous amount of police killings. So we need to look in the mirror.
And part of that is education and training. And if you guys go check it out, beauticians go to school longer than officers
Just a little bit.
the US.
Yes. It all needs to be, the system
Go
needs to
check
be,
it out.
yeah. It's
people holding guns go to less training than beauticians. So go check that out. And so yes, it needs to be a change. We need to have more training. We need to have more how to handle situations. We need change. That's what we're here for.
Yes, exactly. In conversations like this. So,
yes, thank you so much.
No,
we didn't
you.
plan this at all, so I love it.
It's so good. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thank you so much.
Anytime. I'll see
Go
you.
follow guys. She has some great content.
Yeah, join me. We can chat.
Yes, ask her any questions. Open the discussion. She's very open. She's going to take a day off, though, today.
Yes. For sure. Please rest.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. And please.
Thank you.
We love that. And thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.